Hey everyone, I wanted to shoot this video really quick before it became too far away from the event, but about a week ago, I came back from Thailand back home into a colder country, where I was at Devcon in Bangkok. Among many things, I was at several different places, and I wanted to just kind of like give my review of the experience of being there before I forget. And before it's too late, before anyone stops caring, I luckily had the opportunity to interview a whole bunch of people while I was there. So you can expect a whole lot more video interview content from my time there coming up pretty soon that I'm working on. I also took a bunch of notes before I left Thailand in order to just kind of, guide me to just kind of like share some of the things that I noticed while I was there. In total, I was in Thailand for a bit over a month. The last week or two, I was more on vacation mode, doing still a bit of work, but hanging around the islands in Thailand. But yeah, I first started off in Chiang Mai, where there was a bunch of residencies happening. And then after that, went to Bangkok, where Devcon was happening. And then afterwards did a bit of travel. So yeah, it was just like, Devcon, in case you don't know, is just like a giant event. It is once every other year, where basically the Ethereum Foundation, I believe is the main funder, ETH Global, they host a giant conference where they bring people from around the world to come and speak and to host workshops and whatever else. I had the opportunity to speak with Beth McCarthy. We spoke about memes. You can find that video on YouTube, the Devcon YouTube. So be sure to check that out. I can probably link it in the description. But yeah, maybe I thought I would start off with just from the beginning of my experience, just through till the end, and just some of the things that I noticed, just to share kind of like, at least from my point of view, from Socia's point of view, how I perceived the entire experience of being there. So first, I started off in Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai, in case you don't know, is in northern Thailand. It is I believe the second largest city in Thailand. And yeah, it's a kind of digital nomad hub. I'm not really sure why that is, but it's a very common city where digital nomads kind of live. Thailand generally is a place that is quite open for people to live in nomadically, and plenty of tech nomads live there. And among others, there are also non-tech nomadic people who live in this country. But Chiang Mai, I think, is kind of like a center point for a lot of them. But anyways, in Chiang Mai, the reason in part I was there is because Chiang Mai just seemed to be a hub where a bunch of month-long residencies were happening before the lead up to Bangkok. And so there were, I don't even know how many different residencies that were happening. Many of them were like very technical, a lot of like very builder and developer focused residencies where you're a software developer in the crypto ecosystem, you applied, you get in, then you get like free stay, free food to build whatever it is you kind of wanted to build, depending on like the theme of the residencies. There was also residencies like Edge Lana, which is like one that was just highly on my radar with different people that I knew who were kind of taking part in it. That was led by the Zuzalu organizers, Zuzalu in Montenegro, which was a year or two ago now. There was also Funding the Commons. They had their residencies, which took place at 4Cs. 4Cs is this compound for largely Chinese language digital nomads. It is a giant compound. It's pretty big. Giant, I don't know, but it's pretty big, with a lot of places for people to stay. They have like a giant or big cafeteria that people can go and eat and order food. Yeah, it was an interesting place to visit. I think they have maybe even two compounds, 4Cs. One is in the mountains in Chiang Mai, which is where I went to because that's where this residency was. So I was seeing some people there. And then they have, I think, another spot where they have a property. So that was really interesting to meet some of the Chinese nomads who live there. Largely, I think not all of them were mainland Chinese. Some of them were Taiwanese or from Hong Kong, but they tended to be people who wanted to, especially they're from mainland China, to get out of mainland China. And probably in part because they work in crypto and there's like legal gray areas with that. So that was pretty interesting. And what was also really interesting is that, at least as far as I could tell, with these residencies, I was kind of expecting there was half going to be a network state narrative really prevalent. Um, the kind of funding that led to all of these residencies, which was kind of a Gitcoin round, where I believe Vitalik and maybe some other people, or some other sources, gave a bunch of money for a quadratic funding matching round, specifically for residencies that lasted over a month or something like that, and were focused on this and that. And it came from, like, some people I know who are involved in there are very deep into network states as well. But as far as I could tell, there wasn't so much of a network state narrative, which is interesting, because I was expecting more. Oh yeah, there was like an interesting kind of like side story of the network school, which is like a kind of school that Balaji who had started in Malaysia, where he invited, it was a whole thing. Like, he had a announcement for people to apply, people went there. There's a bunch of drama around it. Apparently there was a bunch of mold in the rooms, so a lot of people had to leave. It's, yeah, kind of hilarious. And there's a lot more to it. Hopefully I can share more in a later date. I'm trying to learn more about the story. So there were people, I think, coming from that place, from the network school, who were kind of around as well. But yeah, there's a lot of them went to Devcon, I know. Besides that, what was really interesting about Chiang Mai, at least for me when I was there, is that the narrative around AI was really prevalent. Like, everyone was talking about using AI for various things, especially for software development and for speeding up software development, and also for these AI agents and like these AI meme coins. In case you haven't seen, that's a whole other thing. There is now a meme coin called Goatsy, which is controlled by an AI agent called Truth Terminal, which is also a Twitter account of it as well, where it is simply an AI agent that has been trained on like 4chan posts, Reddit, I think Twitter, Nick Land, fucking philosophy. Yeah, that is a whole thing, and that was interesting and horrifying at the same time. A lot of talk about jailbreaking of AIs. This could be in part because of the places where I was staying, with the types of people that were there. Just a lot of them are really interested in jailbreaking AIs and seeing what we can kind of do with it. And by jailbreaking AIs, it basically meant like getting the AIs to give you answers to things that it normally would not be able to kind of like break from the kind of boundaries in which it's not supposed to talk. Like, it's not allowed to talk about like erotica or like erotic things or sex and things like that. So breaking boundaries like this, it's not allowed to, yeah, do various things actually. So that was pretty wild. It kind of just made me think that the kind of overall impression, at least, and I'm still kind of like processing this, is that we are not ready really for what's about to happen with the proliferation of AI. Like, there is just so much there that, like, I don't know, the average person just has no idea about. And even people who are fairly smart or whatever else have no idea about the kinds of things that people are getting it to do and trying to get it to do for various things. It's hard for me to tell exactly what that is going to be. It seems to me, one, there's clearly a big interest in AIs owning crypto assets. That's a huge thing. And I think there's one of the big reasons I've come to begin thinking about a lot more as to why that is essentially when it comes to like regulations around crypto assets and custody of those assets, and custody, like, by creating a smart contract with a token in it, for example. A lot of the regulations stipulate that you can't, like, if you are controlling that contract, then you are custodying those people's assets, and so you're liable, legally liable. But if you can have an AI agent be the owner of a contract, then you basically have an interface into updating that contract in case you need to, and not having legal liability. So that's something that's, I think, some kind of crazy that potentially might happen as well. And then, yeah, I also went to, there was quite a bit of accelerationist talk throughout, I would say. And that was pretty off-putting at various moments with particular groups and types of people throughout. But yeah, I went to a particular event on AI and neurotech. And I went to kind of like the final panel to listen to some people just to see it and see what they would say. And yeah, it was pretty horrifying, to be quite honest, the things that these people were saying. Yeah, just to like, there was just like way too much hype at the same time, like way too much. I know I'm saying that like AI, like there's something like pretty insane there, but the levels and like the extent these people were going on things was like way too much for me. People just like truly believing that like at any moment now we're going to be in the stars, and really hardline believers in like singularity talk, which is very, very problematic. A lot of the things that they were saying, I would say. I had people claiming, for example, that they would much rather be the poorest person of today than they would like the richest person 100 years ago. As if like the fact that we have smartphones is like the ultimate display of like our conquering of scarcity or something like that. It was very, very strange and very, very off-putting. It's sort of like, man, just go to the child laborers in the Congo mining for copper and tell them that they're better off than like the wealthiest kings of Europe 100 years ago. Like it's just totally insane. But anyways, that was, and then I will say maybe one other point that I noted here is that I did notice like plenty of progressive elements, as I often do in the crypto space, definitely there. As in people talking about things from what you can like broadly describe as a progressive like framework or lens. But I would say there was a very big lack in class analysis. It simply didn't really seem to exist or seem to be something that people were considering, but they were considering things like decolonization or decolonialism or something like that. So yeah, maybe I'll just leave it at that. That's just something that I noted. So from Chiang Mai, kind of like the next big event I needed to go to was funding the Commons. So funding the Commons, they had a residency in Chiang Mai. They had a hackathon happening over the month at the same time. Then they had a 2-day design jam, which is basically like a non-technical hackathon. And then they had a 2-day conference. And I was part of the design jam as a mentor, in part because of my work with DAOstar. So I kind of work part-time for DAOstar to get some extra money. And so I'm the grant standard lead where, just to give some context why I was there. And then at the conference, I spoke about Breadchain and got to share some of the ideas underpinning Breadchain and spoke about how we can fund our commons using the mechanisms that we've built there. So I got the chance to talk about Breadchain a whole lot with people, which was very, very cool. Got to meet a lot of people who were already supporters, people who listened to the podcast and whatever else. So that was really nice. I also spoke a lot about kind of like the main goal that I had throughout the events was talking about the Angel Minters program, which is a program where we're asking for aligned individuals and organizations to mint 10K bread. So that's $10,000 of bread in which you don't lose any of that money. You simply turn your dollars into bread, which is pegged to the dollar, and then you can always burn it back into the same amount afterwards. So was doing a lot of like networking to find these types of aligned organizations and people to become angel minters is the term that we call. So yeah, so that was a pretty nice experience. I think the event went very well. The curation was done very well. It was a really nice spot to meet like the specific types of people who I think would be more open to the ideas that I talk about on the podcast and elsewhere. I also did a lot of talking about post-capitalism. So a lot of people resonated with that idea, actually, which I found really nice. People like the term post-capitalism. I think what that means is really that like people were interested in the idea that they can co-create something new. So that's kind of like the angle that I've taken as far as like the narrative goes. We use this at Breadshare, we use the slogan, I imagine a post-capitalist world with you. So it's an invite that I want to invite you to co-create this thing together and to do that collectively. And so that was something that I found that resonated with a lot of people, which is really nice. And yeah, just got a lot of compliments on my presentation. So that was cool too. Overall, I think that was a pretty good time and I think pretty successful for us. And yeah, I additionally got to meet up with a couple of the Breadchain developers and my co-founder while I was there, or maybe just the developers at that point. At Funding the Commons, they also did a hackathon, forgot to mention. They took part in the Funding the Commons hackathon and they actually won. So that was really cool. I wasn't taking part in that team. I let them take control of that. And so they won 5K in the hackathon, which was also cool. I think it shows kind of like that we do have like good developers and we can actually build things, which is really nice. So then after that was Devcon itself. So Devcon was, I think, about 4 days set in this giant conference center in Bangkok. I would say that the venue was very big and it hosted a lot of people. I think, I could be wrong on this, but I think they were saying there were some like 12,000 attendees at Devcon, which I totally believe. There were so many people. And I would say that overall the event was run pretty smoothly and pretty well. The kind of like the thing about it, which is what my experience every time, is that there's just like so much going on at the same time. Like it's impossible to see everything. It's impossible to talk to everyone you want to. It's something where you really have to like selectively pick what are the things that you want to go and see. But overall, still great. At the same time, what makes it more complicated even to add is that there are lots of side events happening. So there's not only this giant event where constantly talks are happening and whatever else, but there's also a bunch of side events happening and you need to, like, in case you're invited to speak at side events like I am often, then you have to like leave the venue and go. So Devcon was good. It was interesting. The kind of the difficult part was Bangkok itself. The traffic was just like insane. The city, it's crazy. The fastest way to get around was by scooter. Yeah, it was just something else to be like, all right, I need to go and have this like crazy experience on the back of some random person's scooter and drive in between traffic like crazy in order to get to my place on time. But yeah, it was still fun. I have driven scooters a lot, so for someone who's new to it though, it can be like a pretty intense experience being on the back of one of those. So yeah, during this whole time I had a talk at Devcon. I had a couple of panels around as well, and maybe another talk. I don't remember. I think maybe just panels. I think I spoke Devcon and Funding the Commons are the two main talks, as far as I can remember right now, and then a bunch of panels. So yeah, that was interesting. And the types of side events that you'll see will range pretty wildly. Most of them are run by particular like protocols or applications or whatever else that just have the money to sponsor an event in which they invite people to talk about stuff dedicated or related to the thing that like their product works on. So yeah, I had a panel for the Web3 privacy events that I moderated. I had a panel I spoke on this decentralized data storage protocol. And I think another one that I'm not remembering, but yeah, I had a bunch of them. What else? So at Devcon, kind of one of the very interesting things that happened is there was a few different themes throughout the event. One was cypherpunk. So there's definitely like a lot of focus on cypherpunk culture and like, what does that mean? What is it? How do we bring cypherpunk values back into Ethereum more and things like that? And then another big thing of that was Vitalik's idea of DAC, or the D stands for either defensive or democracy or a couple of other things. But it basically, DAC is, he wrote this blog article a while ago where he kind of detailed it out. And it was kind of a bit of a response to Mark Andreessen's Techno-Optimist manifesto. But a lot of people, or this had like largely just available at the event were these little books. DAC, Volume 0, My Techno-Optimism. So this was like the Vitalik's version of techno-optimism compared to Marc Andreessen's, where it's basically just a printed copy of his blog article on DAC. So you can kind of see like throughout, there are even like the different various images that he uses throughout his blog article, even printed into this. So yeah, so it really gave me kind of like Maoist vibes with like the little book. Everyone had their little book that they had so that they can go and read through and remind themselves of the ideology of Ethereum. And definitely it says a lot, I think, about kind of the direction of Ethereum, of course, at least the direction that Vitalik is trying to steward the community. I had read the piece before, but I read it again whenever I got this little book. And there's a lot to say about it. I definitely recommend it a read. There's parts of it I definitely agree with. Some parts of it I would not entirely agree with. But broadly, I do think it is like an interesting, at the very least, interesting response to like the growth of accelerationism broadly within the crypto space and the particular forms of accelerationism being espoused by people like Marc Andreessen or adjacent types, which is definitely very, very sinister and very, very messed up. So yeah, what I found interesting about the book is that he tries to even give like, if, for example, he says, if you are a libertarian, then DAC is like why you would like DAC. If you are an effective altruist, then here's why you would like DAC. If you're a pluralist, if you are a solar punk, this is why you would like DAC. So he's trying to like, clearly trying to create a space that is inviting of many different types of people who may already have opinions about things. And that's like more kind of like towards the end of it. But yeah, in general, the piece is about technology and what types of technology should we be building and what for, which is broadly, I think, the appropriate question to be asking. Like, I do think he's trying to take that question seriously versus taking a, let's just go full throttle, I don't know, where they go into space, accelerate AI, like remove all regulations, these type of things. So he's like not advocating for that, really, at least that's how I feel. He's not advocating for that in the same way, at least that they are. Otherwise, he is like definitely giving some critiques of like venture capital throughout. Is he giving a socialist response to these things? No, but I do think that it's worth taking a look, and it's interesting to give you an idea of kind of the direction that, at least culturally, he would like Ethereum to go into. Yeah, some other things that I noticed, there were lots of non-Europeans and non-Americans there, actually. A lot of people from Africa and from Southeast Asia. And so I think that they choose countries in which they're able to invite people from different places so they don't have these visa requirements, which I think makes a lot of sense. What else? Yeah, just the size of it made me realize how much of crypto, like the crypto space, I don't even have any idea about. It's pretty crazy. What else? Got to do a lot of discussions about bread chain, which is really nice. And what else? Yeah, so the cypherpunk discourse is complicated to me because I think it lacks a kind of clear aesthetics. I think when you think of cypherpunk, it's hard to know what exactly comes to mind besides like crypto, which doesn't have great aesthetics in the first place. But I think what is interesting is that there are ongoing attempts at creating this, at creating kind of like, what does cypherpunk mean? What should we do about it? By people at like Web3 Privacy, which is very cool. And there are definitely very, very clear left-wing elements to it. So I think that's like something to consider when talking about cypherpunk, that it's not just like this digital libertarian thing, but actually there are elements within there that are quite subversive, I would say, align with like a fairly radical left-wing view, or it can be pushed in that direction if done so properly. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to mention about DAC is that it actually, I think, it gets very, very close to many of the ideas I talk about in my book on technoprobabilism, which is kind of like my, yeah, kind of, oops, I accidentally kicked it. So a lot of ideas in my book around techno-probabilism, it gets very close to. So I would love for people, if you want to have like a comparison with kind of like Vitalik's writing and then my writing in the book, yeah, I think it gets really close, or in case you haven't reread it already, it gets very close to techno-probabilism in my view. But yeah, I think that's about it. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you guys so much for all the support, and expect a lot more to come out of as a result of all this traveling I've been doing. Catch you later.